This is Glambition Radio, episode number 291. We're flipping the script with Jaime Masters on her podcast, Eventual Millionaire.
Ladies and gentlemen.
Glambition Radio.
Glambition Radio.
Glambition Radio.
Glambition Radio.
Glambition Radio.
Glambition Radio.
Welcome to Glambition Radio. I am your host, Allie Brown. I'm an entrepreneur, mentor, investor, and founder of The Trust, the modern premier network for 7- and 8-figure women leaders. I love thinking big, doing different, and exploring ideas that disrupt the status quo, especially when it comes to women, because we are creating the new models for leadership, business success, making money, and changing the world. And hey, we're doing it with style. So let's go. This month, it is Flip the Script Summer here on Glambition Radio. So what does this mean? Well, you get to hear me being interviewed. We're flipping it. Usually you hear me as the host, but these episodes all during the month of June, you will hear some fantastic interviews with me. And I wanted to do this because I really have noticed some of my best stuff comes out during interviews like these. It's the conversations that often bring up things I had not even thought about sharing before. So I know you love the solo episodes, but I think these are even better, honestly. And our drop today is an interview I did with Jaime Masters on her show called Eventual Millionaire. Now, this one's from a bit further back than the others. We actually recorded it in 2020, but it was so good that I always remembered it. And it was one of the first ones that came to mind when I'm thinking, you know what, let's get this on our show so our people can experience this interview. We go way back to like the very first moments I started my business, living in New York in the 90s, picking up one of those AOL CDs. That's when I knew like my business would change forever, when I saw what the web could do. And I explained why you need to assess and disrupt your metrics, making a transition in your business. We talk about how I do things so differently today than I used to and why. Really, really good. Jaime has been helping business owners simplify and become more profitable for over 10 years on her Eventual Millionaire podcast. She's interviewed over 500 multimillionaires on how they have created and sustained wealth. And I really didn't know Jaime until she invited me to be one of those people on her show. And I was so impressed with the conversation and was so impressed with her that I wanted to share this with you. So you can learn more about Jaime at eventualmillionaire.com, and be sure to subscribe to the podcast, Eventual Millionaire. We'll put links below in the show notes. 2 quick reminders before we get started. First is get ready because I'm hosting my annual live event again this fall. Iconic is back with a brand new spin for 2022. This is our 2-day business and personal power up for female entrepreneur leaders who know their next chapters can be nothing less than iconic. It's a bigger game now, isn't it, ladies? It's time. It's going to be going on November 2nd and 3rd. Go to this page to get on our priority notification list so you will have all the information when seats open. IconicwithAllieBrown.com. And the second thing I have coming up, it's brand new, and this is especially for those of you who are in the 7- and 8-figure ranges. Later this summer, I'm doing a special online series called the Innovate Sessions. It's an exclusive private series of panel discussions online specifically by and for women who have built high 7- and 8-figure companies. And this isn't just a webinar. You're going to be participating in the conversation with us, just as if you were at a real event. And it's sponsored by my network, The Trust. So if you run a business generating over $1 million in revenue and you'd like info, and when we have full details, just send an email to info@jointhetrust.org or DM The Trust on Instagram or LinkedIn. We'll put some links in the show notes here. Let us know that you would like to participate in the Innovate Sessions. Now, get ready for a fantastic conversation by and with the amazing Jaime Masters on her show, Eventual Millionaire.
Thank you so much for coming on the show today, Allie.
It's great to be here, and congrats on your show. I mean, you've been doing this a while, huh?
A long time, 9 years. Yeah, but you've been doing this longer than me, so I bow down to you. The first question I wanted to ask you is about sort of the transition and change you've seen over the years, because I feel like this industry has grown a lot and changed a lot over since you started. So tell us a little bit about the before and the up to now.
Oh gosh. Yeah. This is your life kind of thing, right?
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to be dating myself a bit, but this really gives a lot of context. And I want everyone to take this in, that when I started my business about 20 years ago, it was, I was doing copywriting and I loved it. It was in my 20s. I was in New York. And the defining moment was someone handing me the AOL CD. If you remember that, I don't know, Jamie, you look like you're 12. I don't know how old you are.
I appreciate that, but no.
Okay. Good skincare. A CD that you put into your computer and would hook you up with dial-up internet. And I remember that moment thinking, my little business is about to change. Because what I did at that time, I just watched what everyone else was doing, which is what we do when we're starting. We're supposed to do this, by the way. I'm going to tell the opposite of that later. And I started a little email newsletter. And I realized instead of marketing one-to-one, I now can market one-to-many. I started sharing what I knew. I started getting clients. My little business hit 6 figures and it started to grow. This started to transform into more of an info marketing business, if you will, / coaching. When I started having people ask me, how are you doing this email newsletter? How are you getting clients? And I'm like, I don't really know what I'm doing, but I know more than you apparently. So I created it. I literally searched for ebook on how to sell ebooks, bought it, learned HTML code, put up a page and started selling ebooks. And I have to tell you, it was just mind blowing at the time how easy it was. And I'm not trying to make you all feel bad now, but it's become so complex now. Back then we had no social. And you also had no one to look at what they were doing. So it was just, you were in this exciting little bubble, just buying things and implementing it and making money. Like, imagine that. The coaching for me started about, I was doing courses and teleseminars and stuff. The coaching started about 2004 because people started to ask, can I just ask, can you work with me? I don't want to buy the thing. I don't want to take the course. I just want to work with you. So I made up just some programs. I'm like, 3 months for $4,000, or, I just started figuring this out. And as an evolution, I'll just share for context, like my timeline, I think 2005 or 6 was the year I hit my first million. A few things contributed to that. One was I started offering the coaching. The second was I started doing some live events. And at the time, there were almost none. Like, my workshop was it. If you wanted to come learn internet marketing, and especially as a woman, and you didn't want to hear from some of these guys, it was the thing. It was called the Online Success Blueprint. What changed everything, I want you kids to listen to me, okay, was social media. When social media was introduced, that started leveling the playing field for everyone to get in on the game. Stuff started getting easier. You could just copy and paste things. You didn't even need a website. Like, it all just really started shifting. And, there's a lot of great things about that because more people could get online and have a platform and have a voice and start publishing and starting a business. And that part's been incredible. But from someone who's been in the industry for so long, it's added this whole new dimension of complexity to our businesses now. And sometimes, I'm going to be honest, I miss that simplicity.
A million times over. And I used to code my own blogs back in 2006 too. And I used to be so proud of how good I could be because everybody else didn't know how to do it. And everything making it easier is an amazing, amazing thing. Don't get me wrong.
Yes.
But like you said, the people that don't know how to code can all do it. So the competition must be crazy, right? So from 2006 to now, what do you really feel like has changed in that social media realm? Because you get on social and everybody's sort of starting at the same level playing field, even though everybody knew your name. Don't get me wrong. I remember knowing your name back then too.
Well, I'll tell you can I share a big mistake I made?
Oh, definitely.
Is that when I saw all this saturation happen and suddenly everyone was like, my team is like, look at this. And we're looking at Facebook and there's ads just copying my ads and ads copying what we were doing. And I started to panic and I kept thinking, we don't have to worry about it because people will be able to tell the difference and they know who I am. So we just kept building better programs. We kept doing better work. We kept just really creating stuff that was truly better. And the problem with that was I wasn't checking in enough on my positioning. And this is the number one topic I talk on now, is that because I took my eye off that ball for a few years and was doing what I thought was right, let's just create better and better programs, people weren't seeing the difference and from the outside. And I have to share that the defining moment that I knew we had waited too long and I've been working too hard at making the programs better versus my positioning externally was we got a phone call and my team called me and they said, we're getting calls asking the difference between your programs and the cool girls that dance in their videos. Okay.
Yes.
And I'm like, you are kidding me. I'm like, what is happening to the industry? It's becoming entertainment. No one's even looking if someone's qualified to teach business. And look, there's a lot of fun stuff. And I always had fun at my events too. We'd have dance parties and all this stuff. But it was like, I was like, what planet have I landed on and what's happening? So I did a huge cleanup. I did a huge shutdown. And many people were watching and they were like, what is going on there? I shut down my programs. I changed a lot of my team. This happened over several years. I also, by the way, finally met the right man and had twins magically. So there were some other changes in this. Went on the show, Secret Millionaire. Yes. It was like this perfect storm saying, one, you can't do stuff the way you've been doing it. It's not working anymore. Mm-hmm. And number two, like, what is this really about for me, Allie Brown, and what I want to create? And I'd had a lot of fun, but you guys got to remember, I've been doing this for so long. It was time for a change. So a lot of people saw from the outside, oh, wow, she's shutting stuff down. It must not be going well or what's happening. And, we still had hundreds and hundreds of people in our programs. The year that I started to make changes, we were on track for about 10 million that year. I mean, it was, don't get me wrong, like we weren't crying in the corner, but that almost made it harder because I'm like, this isn't lining up the way I really want it to. How do I turn the ship? If that makes sense to you.
That's huge. I mean, I love that you're talking about this because nobody really talks about this, the behind the scenes of what actually is happening, especially to a business where you had responsibility to not only the people in the programs, but your team and all sorts of stuff. How do you do that as a leader? And I know I'm taking you off a little bit. I will get back there.
No, it's wherever you want to go. It's your show. That's fine. Are you asking me like, how did I do that?
Yeah. As a leader to make that decision and to turn a humongous ship. That's a lot of pressure too with everything else that you had going on.
It was probably the most agonizing thing I'd ever had to do because here you are, you have a team of probably 20 people and you're feeding them, right? Like they're depending on you. You've built this company and said, here's where we're going. And then, but internally, you're at a point like, this just isn't doing it for me anymore, but you still feel very responsible for them, to the clients. That's why it took about 3 years, honestly. I fulfilled a lot of my obligations, had some hard chats with the team. With the ones that are still with me, I help them start their own businesses. They have clients now. And now, they're saying to me now, two of them are like, I could have never started this multiple 6-figure business if you hadn't made that change and talked to me about it. There's never an easy way to do this stuff. And what sucks is this is the stuff that no one talks about. And this is where most everyone stops. And they will continue that business because of the way that they had built it. And we're at a time now, and especially for the women who have really just gotten into this and they're doing the multiple 6-7 figures, it's a point that I want to talk about a lot because there will be a point that maybe what you want will change. You'll see the market change, but the way you've built things may be hard to change. And you have to see that coming and be working with a coach, especially, or mentor who this ain't their first rodeo. And they have been through many variations of models, shifting the perception of the model so the clients understand why it's happening. I mean, if you're teaching the same thing over and over, doing the same business for more than a few years right now, you are going to be in trouble because things change and people are seeing that.
That's exactly why I was bringing up the whole evolution question, because there is such a rapid change in all of the market, and let alone technology. I mean, of course, technology too, but everything in the market is shifting at rapid speeds wonderfully in many, many ways. Lots of opportunity also. And when people are new in business, it's like, even new, I mean, by 3 or 4 years, they're like, this is the way it went. This is how it goes. Right. Oh no. Right. And this catastrophic, this is not the way it's supposed to be. But what I see is a lot of people hold on to but this is the way it is.
They do. They're like, Facebook ads aren't working. Yes. So we just hired a different guy and now we're paying twice as much. I'm like, no one's like, the emperor has no clothes. No one's talking about it. Yes. And, can I share just the end to that story a bit to give a little picture is that I want to share that this took several years and also people not understanding what I was doing. Mm-hmm. Rumors were flying around. I have all stories about that. I'm like, I'm not in the street with the cardboard sign. Like everything's okay. I'm still driving my Porsche. I'm fine.
Right? I mean, that's a huge thing too. Yeah. Everybody talks. My goodness.
And so, you're making these changes, and the decision I made and the reason I made it was that most of all for me personally is that I had to get back to my genius work. And there's a book that I read at the time called The Big Leap by Gay Hendricks. I recommend it to everyone who is maybe at that point, they've been in business more than a few years. It talks about the difference between being trapped in excellence and then breaking through to your genius. And I realized I built a whole business on excellence. It was where I was proven. It's where the money came from. It's where it all was happening. But I was creatively craving working back in my genius. And so for me personally, now this isn't what everyone needs to do, but I realized my joy is high touch. I'm high concept. I can teach well, but I'm not really a teacher. I hate to even use the word coach anymore because it's become so bastardized. But really that coaching is working with the client and stirring up what really do they want, and how do we play with the model? How do we blow this up? And I'm going to provoke something that you're going to maybe blow up or turn over, and I poke at things. And that's what I love, like helping people learn to think differently, do things differently. So I reinvented the business. And here's what you'll love from the money point, Jaime, is that my personal net now is more than it was before, with a team of 4 people and a very simple business model that I work with 7- and 8-figure business leaders. I do coaching, workshops, and strategic consulting. And that is my whole model. Wow. My ego fought that. My ego was like, who are you if you're not renting out Tao and having dance parties at your events and
yes.
the bigness
big
of it
time.
all.
Yeah.
We are in a world right now there's a toxicity to social as well, in that you're always looking at numbers and followers, and we're programmed to want likes. And so this is a huge conversation we're having. There's so much to this, but I really want to emphasize that this is the only way out. And so if you're in a model right now that maybe isn't fitting, or you're following directions or a formula that isn't working anymore, or you're just bored, and even if it is working well, you need to look ahead.
So to me, when we're diving into this is huge, right? When we look at the difference and going into your genius, how do you figure out what that is to begin with? Because some people are like, oh, I'm just doing what I've always done. And what you're saying, the excellence to genius sort of flip, is people are craving it. And yet they're like, but I don't know where I'm at, how I sort of dive deeper into that. How did you coach people sort of go into that mode?
Well, pick up the book because there's a lot to it, but I would say, what are the time, and the questions sound even cliche when you ask them,
right?
But what do you lose track of time when you're doing? What just brings you so much joy you can't even believe it that it's work, right? And along those lines, there's more questions to it. I would suggest you take a look at it, but it was really where and for me, from a positioning point, and this was not in the book, it's what I took from it though, it's where I'm untouchable. It's where no one can touch what I'm doing. No one can come close to being as good as I'm good at it, where I'm absolutely confident and have no problem even wondering if I know what I'm doing. Do you know what I mean? Like, are we doing the right thing? And when you're doing these programs and you're always like, are we doing the right thing? What's everyone doing? Is this the thing to be doing? Is this what's working? And then when I'm in this other zone, I'm not even thinking of that. There's no comparison. There's no competition. It's this immense freedom to it that you are now in that category of one. And you really are untouchable. So I'm working on my book now, which tentatively is called Iconic. That's the name of my events now. Because for the women I'm working with, it's not just about the formulas anymore. It's what my great work in the world is. And so kind of taking that big leap concept, but then adding this external component to it, and as into what do you want to create now? Now that you've proven yourself, now that you know you can make money, you put some away, hopefully, right? Then what's the next level? What is this really about? That's where I get juiced up, helping people.
Oh, I love this. Okay, so now that we're here, what do they do? Besides hiring you, besides when your book comes out, buying the book, of course. But they're sitting there and they're realizing that they need to make a change. They know what their genius is, at least close, because they know, right? Yep. What do they do?
The first thing I would do is actually look at what you need to let go of. Look at what you need to.
No, I'm saying like that, right? But that always hurts, right? One of the hardest things for business owners in general is to let go of anything, let alone you tell us to do it. It's like,
usually there is going to be a period of a disconnect or letting go of something that maybe even served you for a long time, served you well, served your clients well, but it is just not lighting you up anymore. And this is very hard. And for myself, I know, and some of my clients, that letting go had to come before knowing what was next. And when we start a business, we kind of, you muster up that courage. And some of us have that dark night of the soul that led to starting our first business. This is a whole new dark night of the soul. It is a whole new time because also you have more to lose now. Totally. You start actually kind of second guessing yourself in some ways. You're like, well, I thought I wanted this and I built this and it's not. So what do I want now? Right. But this is very natural. We, especially as women, are not used to this because we are the first generation in history to have these liberties, to be creating businesses like this. And in a business culture that changes so quickly, we don't even have the language to process a lot of what we're feeling right now as we're building these businesses. And so, be gentle on yourself. But I bet right now, there's something you've been doing that just doesn't do it for you anymore. If you can't blow it up right now, then just make notes on it. Like, what is not lighting me up? What is unfulfilling? Or I can't stand these people anymore at these events. I've got to find something different. What is it? Just start. Awareness is the first step, right?
Totally. Okay. So once we have awareness, let's say they're like, okay, thank you for saying that because I now know I need to let go of this and the other thing. And especially if somebody's like, that's great, but all my money's coming from it. What does that transition look like? Or how do we plan for this? Because it's tough. It's all feelings, right? And then we have to actually take action on it. And what is the action what's the real action we should be taking? Not the, I want to blow it all up piece. And maybe that is it.
Indulge in a juicy new project that will pull you forward. If you can't let go of anything now, and I was in the exact point that I couldn't, that is exactly when I started the podcast. And while that may seem like a strategic business decision, I'm going to tell you what happened. I was on a team call. There's like 10 of us on there. And at this point, I'm like doodling on my pad. I'm like another launch, another thing, another program. Okay, blah, blah, blah. My mind just starts going. I'm like, you know what? And remember, this was 2014. So podcasts were kind of hot for a while. Then they disappeared. People weren't talking. And then suddenly they were starting to come up again. I said, I think I'd really enjoy this. And so there's this pause on the call. And I remember just blurting out, I want to start a podcast. And there's silence. And then they all jump on the plan, right? They're like, great. Okay, let's do what's the pre-sale. And then it's going to have an upsell and what's the funnel and blah, blah, blah. I said, stop. I am going to do this because I'm really going to love it. Makes me want to cry when I think about it because I hadn't given myself permission to do that in so long. Everything had to have a strategy around it. I said, this is going to juice me up. I love having amazing conversations with amazing women. I know there's much more we could do around this, but I'm just going to go do this and I'm letting you know. Like, you all need to just back me up on this.
Right.
And it turned into just the most joyous thing that I've done, probably not unlike you and how you feel about this. Like, I love nothing more than these kinds of conversations and having them. And my show's called Glambition Radio, which, today, ironically, starting off with no plan has become one of the biggest ways people find out about me is the show. But it's an example of like doing, give yourself permission for an amazing project or something just juicy for you that you start working on that's going to pull you up into that genius, even if it doesn't have a monetary connection right now.
I love this, especially because I'm starting a new thing that has been pinging me, a new podcast, pinging me for a year. And I kept going, really? But it's not in the plan. It's not in the plan. It's not in the plan. I just got so annoyed that I was like, I'm just going to do it anyway. It could be on the side. Yeah. Doesn't matter. So how do you deal with starting? Because especially for somebody that's already had success, how do you deal with starting something new without crazy nutso strategies? Because the numbers probably would have been better technically if you had crazy strategies or whatever. Like, how do you deal with starting from zero again? Because now that I'm launching this and thinking about doing it in a different podcast, I'm like, it's going to start from zero. How do I deal with that?
You need to disrupt your metrics.
Okay.
And when I use disrupt your metrics, I mean the metrics that you based how you value things in your business.
I love this. Okay. Tell me more.
This is huge. And this is an exercise I do at my iconic workshop is, I can't give it away, but there's something I do that in the moment they all realize how much we judge things and value our worth on the value of some things in our business. So for example, like number of followers. Okay. That's a little thing, right? And when I made that shift, for example, to my new model, which I still hesitate to say small because my ego's like, no, it's not, it's simple, but I'm still I'm still doing big things. My ego's like screaming right now still.
I love it.
And I'm like, shut up. I'm keeping more money.
Right? I know. And that's the funny thing.
Hello. Yeah. So the metrics of it, change your metrics in that. I'll give a quick example. 2 clients, right, come in. This is a hypothetical, but also not. I see this every day. Someone comes in and they can fill a room, right? There's butts in seats. There's people hanging from the rafters. They got 500 people in a room and they're really attached to that, right? Because they're the person who fills the rooms and the seminars are all full and it looks good and it feels good. And that's what they're into. Client B comes in and they have small 50-person workshops, but maybe they don't always sell out. And maybe there's some empty seats in there, right? So at face value, I mean, you guys see where this is going, but if I wasn't taking you here, guaranteed unconsciously, you're looking at this person A and saying they're more successful.
Of course.
Even though the event was practically free, you could bring 10 people and your dog as a guest. There's a mastermind for the dog. It's just a mess, right? But it looks good and feels good. And that's what our ego's attached to. Client B, meanwhile, is making more money. But no one's really looking at that and even guessing that, right? That she's making more and banking more. So it's a metrics game in that we need to shift a lot on, a lot of this industry was built from the male point of view and the guys did a great job. I mean, they're all about the money. They're driving the sales. It's all about the numbers and we can learn a lot from that. What we have brought to the industry is actually questioning things, looking at the meaning of things, looking at where this is all going and not just repeating the same mistakes. So, I will sometimes have a client fighting me on changing the model because they're so attached to it when really there could be such a simpler option. It depends on your goals. But so shifting, for example, client B, her metrics is net profit per event. It's the quality of clients in the room because she's selling a higher end program and doesn't want everyone off the street and their dog and people came in for the free air conditioning, right? So it's such a different game. And my metrics now, one of my metrics is how much time of each day am I spending in my genius that I'm so lit up, that I'm so enjoy, right? So play with your metrics. Look at what metrics have you been valuing and honoring without, even realizing it probably. And then on the flip side, how can you replace that? Maybe it's the quality of clients you work with. Maybe it's actually how little you work versus how busy you're showing you are. It's flipping it all.
Oh, the little piece that you just said, though, I have 2 kids also, not twins. But,
how old are they?
9 and 12.
Oh, tell me it gets easier a little bit.
It totally gets easier. It's amazing now. And I was a single mom for a very long period of time. And so busyness, when you bring up the word busyness, it's always like a mom guilt busyness thing, right? So to me, I say full now, I don't like the word busy because it has a bad connotation on it.
Yeah.
But how do we manage it? You're a mom, right? And I technically work 30 hours a week-ish, but I love working. So I definitely work over that. But with the kids and stuff, I'm always on, right?
Yeah.
So how do you change up the metrics on those pieces, right? So yes,
that's interesting because we have metrics about parenting, don't we?
Oh, really?
We have ways we really do. And for me, I had to shift that it wasn't about quantity of time with them. It's about quality. So I'll give a quick example. And again, I feel like I need this mom disclaimer because moms just get ape shit.
Right?
Everyone needs to calm down right now everywhere. Everyone's losing it everywhere. Have you noticed?
Yes. But we're supposed to be perfect moms on social media. You didn't realize that?
You feel like you're going to offend. I know. You feel like you're going to offend everybody at every moment. And it's just going to happen. So for example, I don't drive my kids to school. I don't enjoy driving. It's a half-hour drive. Right? We have a wonderful nanny. Okay. And I'm happy to talk. No one talks about that they have a nanny. I have a nanny. She's amazing. They love Jenna. Jenna shows up and they love Jenna. So see, it's what you place a value on. Driving them to school, I'm stressed. I don't enjoy it. I'm watching the road. I can't really be with them. I would much, much rather we take half an hour to cuddle in the morning. They jump in bed with me. I'm not rushed to get up. We have cuddle time. We have talk time. We can have breakfast together. You have to decide what's important to you and your children. My kids are only 5, but they've never said, I really wish you would drive us to school. And I don't think that's be something they'd say when they're older either. And I'm here when they get home.
So
you have to decide, you have to decide what's right for you. And again, it's not, everyone's things are different. Maybe you love driving. I had one client who hired somebody to help get dinner ready because she wanted to go pick up the kids from school. That was very important to her. She loves driving. She loved picking them up and talking to the teacher. And it can change anytime. This is your business. So you have to figure out what's important to you and do that. And you're going to need more support than you think. Oh my God.
You have twins.
I talk to moms all the time and I'm like, I am so sorry. Before kids, I'm like, just get a sitter, work harder. I had no idea the emotional weight that we carry every moment thinking of those kids and how much they've changed my life. It's incredible. And knowing as a business owner, you're going to do things a little differently and you have permission to design your parental life just as much as you design your business.
I love all of this. And I don't drive my children to school. They go to a school that's quite far away. The PA is actually downstairs making dinner at this moment, trying to be quiet for our interviews.
Awesome. I'm coming over.
So, right. So hopefully it'll be good. No. But what's interesting that I find is as I shift things, I keep trying to tweak as best as I can. And there's always stuff that still pops up. Right. So like I had to talk to
guilt, you mean?
Guilt. Yes. So like I had to talk to my mastermind group about hiring somebody to drive them because I was like, I want to be the person that drives them. Right. So, but even now there's always little things that keep popping up as we start clearing things away. So does it ever get right? And then I start feeling guilty about, and don't get me wrong, my life is amazing. I'm not saying that I'm guilty all the time or anyway, but I want to try and keep tweaking to make things a little easier and a little easier and a little easier and happier and joyful every day. Right. Yeah. So how do we mitigate that with hugeness, right? When we live, especially as a female entrepreneur in the masculine world, and I work with mostly men, right? So all of these men are like, I need bigger, better, whatever. How do you mitigate that? Especially because your kids are only 5, right? And you could be doing bigger, better, like you said. How did you actually internalize that the smaller numbers are okay and that you don't need to be absolutely huge? Yeah.
Well, I did need to feel fulfilled that I was making an impact and out there, and the show did that for me. I didn't have any guilt about working a lot less, like 3 days a week, and I still probably, if you added up my hours, it probably is still 3 to 4 days a week, honestly. So you mean like mitigating it with the mom guilt or just literally, just practically, how do you work on these big projects when you have a family? Is that what you mean? Just in general?
Don't you want to do like quote unquote more? Right? Like once your kids are older, when we start looking at like 10, 20 years out, do you feel like you're going to be like, oh, I still want more? Or are you just going to keep it at this level?
It's interesting because it went away for a little while after the kids and I was very happy with that model. And then last year it was like catching a cold again. It was like I woke up and said, I don't want to say I'm back. That's so cliche, but I was like, it turned on again. I think for me, it was just a cycle. Like I have typically a 3-year creative cycle, which is good for everyone to be aware of. You may have a cycle that you have a model works for 3 years and then you kind of get bored or you want to make a change. And that was happening. That's when I called the agent who's been chasing me for 2 years and said, I'm ready. I'm ready to write the book. I told my team I'm ready to respond to media requests again. And sometimes, it lined up with the kids going into school. So maybe that happens for a lot of moms, but I just knew I was ready again. What's interesting is my kids, I guess I'm pretty lucky. They're just pretty awesome kids. And they get I heard Jordan talking to Madison. Jordan kind of has this old man voice. And Maddie was like, where's mommy? And he knew I was working. He goes, she's unavailable. So they just kind of know that, but I know it may be weird when they're older to say, oh, my mom goes and checks into hotels by herself to work on her book, but she always comes back in a day or two, I don't know, but we all just figure this out and it's messy, but it's what we have to do.
See, I so appreciate you allowing us to hear about part of the messiness, right? Because I feel like we never fix it all. We're never perfect. There's no matter how big, no matter how small, there's always going to be something. And the fact that you're willing to say, hey, sometimes I need to go out to a hotel. I agree with you a million times over. I'm so thankful that you're willing to say
or
that.
just walk, or they're driving me nuts. And I'm like, I love my kids, but I need to walk away before I end up on the news. I'm going to lose it.
You got 5-year-old twins. My best friend has 5-year-old twins too. Woo.
Mom abandons family in Scottsdale and never came back. That will never happen. But you have those moments you're like, I need to go just breathe and be alone. Yeah. And one of my number one values has always been freedom. And so it was an incredible challenge for me to step into motherhood. As much as I love it, there was always in me this push-pull. There's this rebel single girl still there who wants a lot of time alone. And then there's this mom who never wants to leave her kids. And I think for a lot of us, we have that dance. And thank God we're alive today that you can get help with the things that don't matter as much and then make time for the things that matter.
So amazing. And that's why you're a guru, right? You could admit the craziness of life and give us help so that way we can see the forest for the trees, because it makes a huge difference when you're in it. It's so much harder to see than when you can listen to someone like you and go, I'm doing good. And it's messy. It is. And at 9 and 12, way better. Just so you know, like 5 was rough. 9 and 12. Oh, wow. Way better for me anyway. So I love this. I know we have to start wrapping up in just a second. So I'm going to ask the last question that I always ask, but I want to have you back on the show when your book comes out. So that way we can push that, because I know everyone needs to read that too. But what's one action listeners can take this week to help move them forward towards their goal of $1 million? I'm going to give the counterintuitive advice to everybody, because you'll hear other stuff from everybody. You'll hear the same thing. You need to start looking at your industry, and whatever everyone's doing, you look at how you can do the opposite. Look at how you can do the opposite. How can you stand out doing something completely different? I advise a lot of the clients who come to me when they're either ready to break or over 7 figures, I tell them actually to stop going to industry events. I did a whole creative workshop on this because I saw people just locked into such formulaic thinking that it took 2 days to get them out of their industry formulas and into thinking completely differently, looking at different industries, reading different things, reading different magazines. Just break it, shake it up, and think about what you can do. What's one thing that you could do that would be dramatically different than anyone else in your industry? That's my best advice. Nobody ever says that. Thank you. Good. Yeah, right? So I'm walking my talk. All right. One follow-up. I normally don't do follow-up, but what if they're scared? What if they're scared like crazy to do that? Those people aren't your friends anyway, so just go do it. Yeah, that's a great. It's true. No, it's true. No, really. Everyone's scared. Usually what comes up is actually not fears around the clients or how they can help them or what they want to do. When you really keep digging down, it's pissing someone off in your industry, maybe because you're friends with people. Like this is, I'm generalizing, but I see this a lot. And then I always nail them. I'm like, are you really good friends with these people anyway? They're always like, well, no. I said, well, they're all talking about you anyway. You may as well just go do the thing that you know is going to change people's lives. I love it. Where can we find more about you online? I know it's allybrown.com. Where do we find Glambition Radio and all the follows, everything for you online? You can jump to Glambition Radio. Just go to glambitionradio.com. That'll take you right to iTunes. We've had some great guests lately. I just had the Ellen Latham, the founder of Orange Theory, the fastest growing franchise, one of them in the world. We have some amazing, high quality women entrepreneurs and leaders. And, so if they like this show, they'll love my show too. Hoping to have you on my show soon. That would be amazing. Everyone go follow Allie. She's amazing and a change maker in the industry. And we need more women like her. Thank you so much for coming on the show today. Thank you. Thank you for joining me for this episode of Glambition Radio. If you enjoyed the show, make sure you subscribe so you automatically get my new shows every week. Also, I'd love if you left us a review so more women like you can discover us. We're on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, Pandora, and other major platforms. And I'd love to hear from you personally. Come join the conversation on social. Instagram is my happy place lately, and that's Allie Brown Official, but you can find links to my other platforms at allybrown.com. Glambition Radio is the elevated conversation for women leaders, and I'm honored you tuned in.